Omatnyanatimirandhasya jnananjanashalakaya chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Pranobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Saratyam Arjunasya Kurvan Gita Natam Dada Lokatrayopakaraya Tasmai Krishnatmane Namaha. To begin with, I offer my obeisances unto Lord Shri Krishna, who accepted the position of the chariot driver of Arjuna, just to distribute this ambrosia of the Gita for the benefit of all the three worlds. Ajnana niradirupaiti yaya vishesham bhakti parapi bhajate paripausham tattvam param spurati durgamamapyachashram satgunya vitsvarachitam pranamami Gitam. I offer my respects to the Gita, which was spoken by the Lord, endowed with perfect qualities. It is a work by which the ocean of ignorance meets its complete end, by which pure bhakti becomes fully nourished to the highest degree, and by which the supreme truth, normally difficult to understand, becomes eternally manifest. Vyavahita pritana mukham niriksha swajana vadat vimukhasya dosha putya kumati maharadatma vidyaya yascharana paramasya tasya mesto. When Arjuna was seemingly polluted by ignorance upon observing the soldiers and commanders before him on the battlefield, the Lord eradicated his ignorance by delivering transcendental knowledge. May his lotus feet always remain the object of my attraction. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, what was the emphasis of chapter 4 so far? What did you catch from it? What is Krishna trying to say?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yeah.
Krishna is trying to say to Arjuna that he has to gain that transcendental knowledge about the, what was the truth about him, and so just get out of that ignorance and just carry out his duties. So with this transcendental knowledge.
And do that duty in what mood?
In the service, in serving to him.
As a sacrifice.
As a sacrifice, yeah.
Yeah. And what did Krishna say about what will happen? What is the fault in not doing a sacrifice?
Then he will gain his simple reaction.
Someone else? If we don't do a sacrifice, what is the result?
Mataji, there is no happiness either in this life or the next life.
Okay, good. And what is the goal of all sacrifices?
Purification.
Purification and?
Transcendental knowledge, Mataji.
Okay, the main goal is transcendental knowledge. What is another goal also?
Devotional service.
Okay, that's the highest goal. And one more? Three main
Control of senses.
Control of senses. Yes, thank you. All 4 points were mentioned by all of you. Purification, attaining transcendental knowledge, control of senses, devotional service. Memorize it, okay? So, from this section, suppose we're really like down for some reason in our life, which happens, right? Which happens a lot in life. What can you do to quickly uplift yourself? Did anybody try that? What can you do according to this section? What is Krishna saying? Not complicated question, simple question.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yeah?
Is it the mercy of Lord and His devotees? Krishna consciousness can be attained only by the mercy of Lord and His devotees. So maybe association of devotees, Mataji.
Okay. You're giving the answer is not wrong in and of itself, but I'm trying to just refer to the section we covered last time. So basically, the answer I'm looking for is do some sacrifice. Do something for others. Sacrifice something. So the moment we make some little sacrifice, it will immediately uplift us. No matter how down we are, how depressed we are, whatever the situation is, if we can do something for someone, it will immediately uplift our consciousness. So that is an act of sacrifice, to do something for someone else and not for ourselves, right? And we can do these sacrifices anywhere, and particularly the sacrifice of Sankirtan Yajna. We can do anywhere, even if you're in a jungle, you're in a desert, or we are all in a concrete jungle. We can distribute books in this concrete jungle. That's a sacrifice. And immediately it will uplift us. So when we try to give something, we feel increased happiness. And actually that state of happiness or, elevation in our consciousness, that's worth all the sacrifices that we can possibly make. So you'll have some little exercise to do or something to work on. But before that, I want to ask, as you all chanted over the last 1 week, did anybody try to, think of it explicitly? Okay, this is a sacrifice, and what you're offering into the fire. What is this fire? What is the ghee? What is the spoon? When you're chanting, did anybody try to do that? And you have any realization to share from that?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
I deliberately tried this, Mataji, the sacrifice of time. And then chanting. While chanting, the quality of chanting significantly was better the whole week. By learning the different types of sacrifices, and we are already on the level of highest one, and doing this will uplift us. And that knowledge itself, and then sacrificing time, and then the exercise of the fire, the ghee and spoon, that really improved the quality of chanting. I felt the difference, Mataji.
Good. Thank you for applying yourself. Anyone else tried it? Or you completely forgot about it? You tried?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Please accept my humble obeisances, Mataji. All glories to Prabhupada. Mataji,
you're sounding like a robot.
I always have this problem with my phone during the call.
I wonder what. Now it's fine. It's only when you start speaking something to really share, then it's. Try again.
So I started chanting with the mood that I'm doing this chanting for the pleasure of Krishna, with the Lord, with the holy name not being different, and the Lord being physically present there wherever I'm chanting. Before the start of the chanting, there were a number of things that my mind was occupied by, especially something related to work. There were a lot of disturbances, but somehow or the other, trying to chant in this particular mood with intense prayer to the Lord to give me the strength to focus. I could really see a difference in after a few minutes, Mataji, like all of the distractions were they were not bothering my mind, but it was the sense, the change in the mood and the state of the consciousness was completely different when even after chanting with this particular mood and prayer, Mataji.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And I hope some others also try to apply this, but maybe you're just too shy to share. So any realizations from the little exercise that you did?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing the exercise, the first exercise, Mataji, which distracts you in chanting. What sense?
That one. Okay.
Yeah, I noticed, Mataji, actually, even before I notice itself, the mind is not on the holy name. That's what my realization is, that the whole time before I notice itself, there is no the intention is not there on the holy name, Mataji. But since I was doing the exercise, I was consciously bringing the mind back. I didn't notice any sense, but I feel that the mind is always distracting. It's not due to any of the senses, like eye, ear, nose or something, but the mind itself is very distractive, Mataji.
That's interesting. Okay.
Mataji, can I share?
Yeah.
This is also the first exercise, Mataji, that Harikada Mataji was mentioning about.
Okay.
Just before the start of chanting, I was just examining where the thoughts were going. So that kind of gave me some sense of how deep the attachments are, what kind of attachments I have, and also how distant I am in my relationship with Krishna, because the mind was easily going towards that attractions, but whereas it's difficult to bring the mind to focus on Krishna. So it gave me some insight into how distant my relationship was with the Lord, but how much attachments I had on the other hand.
Okay. So this is one of the things, by just even trying to apply the exercise, we become really aware about where we are and what we're doing and what to do actually. And when we don't reflect, right, we just go on mechanically being pulled and pushed by the modes. So it's very helpful to do these exercises. Okay. So the other exercise anybody did?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Specifically the part about how it leads to transcendental knowledge. And did I mention the other part of try to categorize these different sacrifices into like those performed by senses, those performed by mind, those performed by intelligence? Did I do that part or no? I didn't, I think.
No, Mataji.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, you can try to do that also if you like. Because for this chanting the holy name, we can do it on all these three platforms: on the platform of the mind, or the senses, or the intelligence. You can just do just lips and tongue while watching TV or internet or movies, and that's senses are chanting, But if you involve the mind, then there's feelings and there's attention and so on. Intelligence could be we're always planning this and that, how to accomplish something or how to chant better in the future, but we're not chanting right now. So anyway, yeah, you were saying something.
Hare Krishna Mataji, for the exercise that you mentioned, list all the sacrifices that we are doing and what's the purpose. It's kind of very revealing, Mataji. I had a list, and apparently most of them were like feeding into my controllership and enjoyment. And particularly for chanting, as I was reflecting each day, the purpose was really to have a peaceful day, and to have my control, and like so at workplace or family, I want things to go smooth. It was kind of there is no place for Krishna there. It was really revealing, Mataji.
Okay, that's interesting that you did this exercise. I guess I didn't word it properly, but you did the exercise basically to reflect on all the different sacrifices you're doing and what's the result and so on, right?
Yes, Mataji, that is another exercise, Mataji, you mentioned.
Oh, that I mentioned, yeah. I didn't write it down. Okay, that's very nice. That's nice, yes. That's nice, yeah.
Thank you.
It's nice to reflect on these things, isn't it? Sometimes it's overwhelming also to understand how much we are in the center of everything, and Krishna is only off there like a tiny dot in the periphery, and that's not easy to accept sometimes and face. But it's good if we realize that, then we can do something about it, right? And that is why this whole process of Krishna consciousness is like a mystery, or this most confidential knowledge that we're going to hear in chapter 9. What is that most confidential knowledge? Is this bhakti? Sometimes we've been practicing for so many years, but don't know what exactly we're doing, right? Okay, so we'll begin today's section, last section of chapter 4. So now so many sacrifices have been described by Krishna in the last section. But how do we know what to follow and exactly how to do it and when and all that? So Krishna gives, in this section 34 to 42, he gives a summary of the transcendental knowledge and how transcendental knowledge can be attained. So specifically, text 34 will talk about how to achieve the transcendental knowledge. 35 to 38 will speak about the fruit. 39-40 will speak about who can achieve it. And 41 is the symptoms of success, and 42 is finally the conclusion that Krishna wants Arjuna to slash these doubts of ignorance with the sword of knowledge and get up and fight. So how to acquire transcendental knowledge? This is a verse everybody should memorize. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So there is 3 key words here. There is pranipatena, pariprashnena, and sevaya. They've been highlighted here. So pranipat, so the word pranipat, pra means like genuine attraction, or basically a desire to surrender. That's what pra means. And ni means that we cannot get out by our own effort. So why there is the need to surrender or submit with genuine sincerity? Because because we cannot get out by our own effort. And pat means that therefore, I fall flat in front of spiritual master in full surrender. So this word pat means like dandavats. So we are falling in front of spiritual master in full surrender, and we are ready to receive the order of the spiritual master. So this is pranipat, is this whole mood of how we approach the spiritual master, this mood of submission, humility, because we understand that we cannot get out of this mess any other way, and are sincere about it, and therefore we surrender. And then there is pariprashnena. There also needs to be inquiries, and then there is rendering of service, menial service. So all three have to be present. It shouldn't be one without the other. So sometimes you see that there's two of them. If somebody is very, they approach a spiritual master and they make inquiries, but they do no service. It's just all at the, intellectual platform. The famous story everybody likes to tell is how this one person came to Bhaktisiddhanta, and he had all these questions, and Bhaktisiddhanta just said, you go assist, you go ask this pujari. And then the pujari says, well, can you polish all this paraphernalia? And so this person thinks, then why is he asking me to do all this? I don't need to do all this. But anyway, he polishes all the paraphernalia. And then after that, Bhaktisiddhanta comes back and then, says, okay, what's your question? He says, my question got answered actually just by doing that service. So sometimes, the first two are there and there's no service, and that doesn't, make us go very far. Or sometimes people do a lot of service, but actually there is no submissive spirit, or they never make any inquiry about how to make advancement in spiritual life. They just like to do this, whatever service they like, right? And it's a very, very wonderful purport. I'm inclined to read the whole purport because it's so hard to skip this purport. The path of spiritual realization is undoubtedly difficult. The Lord, therefore, advises us to approach a bona fide spiritual master in the line of disciplic succession from the Lord himself. No one can be a bona fide spiritual master without following this principle of disciplic succession. The Lord is the original spiritual master, and a person in the disciplic succession can convey the message of the Lord as it is to his disciple. No one can be spiritually realized by manufacturing his own process, as is the fashion of the foolish pretenders. The Bhagavatam says, Dharmam sakshat bhagavat pranitam. The path of religion is directly enunciated by the Lord. Therefore, mental speculation or dry arguments cannot help lead one to the right path, nor by independent study of books of knowledge can one progress in spiritual life. One has to approach a bona fide spiritual master to receive the knowledge. Such a spiritual master should be accepted in full surrender, and one should serve the spiritual master like a menial servant without false prestige. This is very important. That menial servant means that you do all kinds of little services, something where you don't even get noticed, just, for the pleasure of the master without false prestige. Satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. Inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding. Unless there is submission and service, inquiries from the learned spiritual master will not be effective. One must be able to pass the test of the spiritual master, and when he sees the genuine desire of the disciple, he automatically blesses the disciple with genuine spiritual understanding. In this verse, both blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. Not only should one hear submissively from the spiritual master, but one must also get a clear understanding from him in submission and service and inquiries. A bona fide spiritual master is by nature very kind towards the disciple. Therefore, when the student is submissive and is always ready to render service, the reciprocation of knowledge and inquiries becomes perfect. So the satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master, that is really the secret of success in spiritual life. This is Krishna's system for us to attain Krishna. And we cannot underestimate the importance of this principle. The story I always like to tell here is the story of Ramanujacharya. Ramanujacharya, he had many gurus who were actually teaching him. So one can have many Shiksha gurus. So there was Mahapurna and Goshtipurna and other Purnas. But he was told that he needed to learn one other secret from one more guru. And he went and told that guru that, I came to learn this upon the instruction of my guru. And Mahapurna said, I'm not going to give you anything. And Ramanujacharya said, well, I'm just going to serve. I just want to serve. And Ramanujacharya just tried to serve Mahapurna in so many different ways, in all kinds of menial ways. And he did this not for 1 day, 2 days, but for an extended period of time. And after that extended period of time, Mahapurna said, well, you're a thief. I didn't want to give you anything, but you forced me. You're forcing me to give you because of this humble mode of service. So when spiritual master is pleased with really when he notices that service mood, and service mood, that means that we're not doing that service to just, attract some attention to ourselves in one form or another, but rather that genuinely we want to just do this to assist the spiritual master. And when that mood is seen, he becomes very pleased. The same story, Narottam Das Thakur, very similar, and Lokanath Goswami. Narottam Das Thakur wanted to take initiation from Lokanath Goswami, but he said, I'm not going to initiate anyone. And so Narottam Das Thakur, he used to every day, he would go and clean up the place where Lokanath Goswami used to answer the call of nature every morning. And every day he would just make the place very clean, fresh soil, like that. And Lokanath Goswami started noticing, who is doing this? Every day it's so clean here. And then one day he just observed from the side standing. And then he saw that Narottam Das Thakur was doing this. And Narottam Das Thakur was not an ordinary person. He came from a princely order. So, but he was taking such a humble position, just serving. And it was very, very sincere. And so Lokanath Goswami, gave him initiation. The only disciple, literally, So this is the secret, and it cannot be faked. We cannot just okay, I'll be in super mode of service when the spiritual master comes. We see that all around sometimes. But other times, life of this disciple is very, very different. So Krishna inspires the spiritual master to understand that. It's not so difficult for him to understand. So, and the other things we're hearing here, unless there is submission and service, inquiries from spiritual master will not be effective. So, we may inquire, but unless that full trust is there for the spiritual master, he's not going to give transcendental knowledge. Ultimately, it's Krishna. Krishna is the one who delivers transcendental knowledge through the medium of spiritual master. So it's really Krishna who's giving. So Krishna knows our intents perfectly. And if our mood somewhere is off, just like, there's secrets between sometimes husband and wife, and if, one of the partners just goes on the street and announces to everyone, hear, look, what my husband said or what my wife said, how would the spouse feel? They would feel really offended. So Krishna also, or the spiritual master also, will not give the secrets to a person who's not eager and deserving. Because even if one gives it, one will not value it in any way, right? So now, what are the qualifications of the spiritual master mentioned? Some of them are mentioned here. The qualifications are basically his jnaninas tattva darshinaha, that he is self-realized. He has seen the truth and he has realized the truth by following it. And that he belongs to a disciplic succession coming from the Supreme Lord. He has heard this message in disciplic succession. He actually sees Krishna everywhere. He sees no duality. Just one second. Okay. And he acts, very transcendentally in all aspects. Or there's a nice verse from the Bhagavatam, 11th canto, which speaks specifically about the qualifications of the disciple as well as the spiritual master. Tasmad gurum prapadyeta jignasu shreya uttamam shabde parecha nishnatam brahmani upashramashrayam. So the last two lines describe the qualifications of the spiritual master. Shabde parecha nishnatam means that he knows Shabda, he understands the scriptures completely, and he can defeat any argument, and he understands Brahman properly, Nishnatam. So these are some of the qualifications of spiritual master. Now, what are some wrong reasons for accepting a spiritual master? What are some wrong reasons? So the first two lines of the verse I quoted give the right reasons. Tasmad gurum prapadyeta jignasu shreya uttamam. So when we want to inquire about the shreya, the ultimate good, that's when we should approach the spiritual master. So what are some wrong reasons? You all should know this.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yeah, Pratana.
So Mataji, if
what's your Prema Leela? Sorry.
Yeah. Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. If we want approval for our satisfaction, and if we approach spiritual master and then put our expectation in such a way that he will approve it, then it's wrong.
Okay. So to get a rubber stamp in our life, that's one reason. Sometimes just peer pressure, because everyone has a guru, so I should get a guru. Like Prabhupada would like to say, so everyone has a dog, so I'll also get a dog. Guru is not like that. He's not a showpiece or something. Everyone has it, so I also get one.
Not with the intention of fame or money, to gain fame or money.
Yeah, to get some position, prestige, all that would be wrong. Or thinking sometimes that initiation is the end of spiritual life.
Not by seeing the physical feature of the spiritual master.
Yeah, very good point, yes. So some spiritual masters speak very eloquently, and that alone shouldn't be the reason, Yeah, good. So you can think of more. And we covered this point already. Unless there's submission and service, inquiries will not be effective. And what is the essence of relationship with spiritual master?
To receive the transcendental knowledge.
How do you get that?
By submissive and inquiry service.
Yeah, that's fine. But what should you do exactly? After you make inquiries, what happens? When you make an inquiry, then?
you develop the faith and trust.
No, when you inquire, that spiritual master say something?
Yes.
Okay. What should you do?
Follow the instructions.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So following instructions, following his instructions is the essence of relationship with spiritual master. So initiation is literally like plugging in. But without following the instructions, there will be no flow of electricity. Even though you're connected here, to the disciplic succession, there will be no flow of the transcendental knowledge or mercy if we don't apply ourselves to the instructions that he's giving. And another thing Prabhupada says here is that we must be able to pass the tests of the spiritual master. So sometimes the spiritual master may test. He may test our sincerity, our genuineness. He may test our faith. He may test us by asking us to do a service which we don't like at all. Nowadays, actually, spiritual masters are not doing much of that, because nowadays spiritual masters are so scared that the disciple will just go, because our false egos are so high in Kali Yuga, right? So he asks in such gentle ways, do you think you can do this? I know you don't like this, but I mean, they're so gentle. But actually, some spiritual masters are a little more heavy. But it's important for this spiritual master to test the disciple, to ask us to do a service which we don't like, or ask us to do a service with someone we don't like, because that will determine how much we're willing to really become like a servant without any other personal interest, right? So guru and disciple both are meant to test each other, but the disciple should test before accepting the guru. You can test the guru. You can, make sure that whatever understanding you have of spiritual master by reading about the qualifications, duties, qualities of spiritual master and disciple, we can see, okay, do I still want him as my spiritual master? So typically we recommend devotees to read the spiritual master and disciple book, or nowadays we also have the disciples course as a requirement before initiation. But it's nice to read this book, because then we can decide, do I still want him as my spiritual master, right? And so before initiation, before accepting the spiritual master, a disciple can test. But once you accept initiation, you cannot test the guru anymore. After that, only guru can test us, right? And the other point Prabhupada makes, no blind following or absurd inquiries. So we have to base it on Shastra, Sadhu, Guru. If we don't read Shastra, we will actually not be able to know something. So, but if we read Shastra, we can understand, and then it will not be blind following. And of course, not for material desires, profit, or just like as a formality or something like that, or not without knowledge of purpose. And no absurd inquiries, One time I remember in Gita Nagari, actually that person was quite, he was not a disciple, but he was another devotee, not disciple of my Guru Maharaj, but he just came and asked Maharaj, how's it going? How's everything? Or what's up? I think he asked, what's up? And Maharaj said, well, Krishna is up and everything is under his control. So we should be very careful what we ask spiritual master. It's not at all appropriate to go up to spiritual master and ask, how are you doing, Gurudev? That's not proper question to ask. So anyway, there was a story of one Kshatriya king on a horse one time, and he was followed by 3 to 4 assistants or disciples, you can say. But they were walking with him, and his hat had fallen down, and the assistants really did not pick it up. And then the Guru said, to please pick up whatever falls. So then they started picking up anything that falls. So they were picking up even the dung of the horse. And then, the king said, what you should be picking up, the different items. Okay, you don't need to pick up the dung of the horse. And then after some time, actually the king fell down. So then the assistants picked up all the list of things that the king gave, but they didn't pick up the king. So anyway, so that is, it's kind of like a joke, but that is kind of like an example of blind following, not using our brain at all. So sometimes spiritual master will give instructions, and he may have given 2 or 3 different instructions in different situations. And it doesn't mean that we just hang up our brain completely. We need to use our head a little bit and think properly. What is the proper thing to do here, right? And spiritual master by nature is very, very kind. Why he's very kind? That's the last point Prabhupada makes in his purport. Very kind. Why? Because he has seen the truth. If someone has seen the truth, that means they understand, who we are and where we are, right? So naturally he's filled with compassion. And spiritual master is also representative not only of the super soul, but he's guided by Radharani. So even if sometimes he seems like he's not kind, or he seems to be like a little bit heavy or harsh, or he chastises us, that is also actually good for us. That is also his kindness. And a real disciple will see the chastisement actually the supreme kindness of the spiritual master. And so a disciple must really try to understand the mood of spiritual master at all times. And if he can actually reach a point of communion, literally, with the spiritual master, it's like an intimate relationship of understanding what he wants all the time, then actually the disciple becomes more and more empowered, because he's really trying to please the spiritual master by observing everything and trying to think what will please him at this moment, what will please him at that moment. So you can see he's just making the words of spiritual master, the mood of spiritual master, really like his life and soul. So then naturally he's blessed and he becomes a very, very empowered disciple. Right? There's so many things to say in this verse, but I might end up speaking a whole hour on this verse. I don't want to do that. But there is some additional, points covered in these charts. I very much recommend that you go through these. This is, of course, just the purport, this one. But starting here, there's some additional things. Let's see, maybe I'll quickly cover it in 5 minutes. But this is basically the 4 Vaishnava Sampradayas for those of you who are not familiar. So this is a nice chart for the 4 Vaishnava Sampradayas. And this is also some reference about the 4 Vaishnava Sampradayas from the Bhagavatam, because some people ask, where is it said? It's not there in the Bhagavad Gita or anywhere. So this is actually a reference where these different personalities are mentioned here. And here is some further elaboration of qualifications of a bona fide guru. You can go through it. And here's some elaboration of qualifications of a disciple. And here is actually something very practical, of some cautions for preachers. That while we have many spiritual masters within our movement, We should remember that ISKCON is our founder Acharya, and when we're preaching, we shouldn't have some political intention in preaching or for name or fame. Beware of rhetoric philosophy and impersonalism. Present the message of the Lord without any alterations. But the main thing I really wanted to say is this part, is that promoting one's guru when one is preaching, this happens. It's a problem. It's really a problem. One may be very inspired by their personal guru. That is fine. But to promote one's guru while preaching, that is not very proper. We have to respect it's not pleasing even to one's own spiritual master when one does that, because he wants his god brothers to be seen with the same respect as he's being seen. So do not try to just manipulate in different ways or be sectarian or just speak in ways that devotees cannot mix with other groups or something. It's all right. Allow them to hear. If we are presenting something purely and in a detached manner, people will come to you anyway. I have seen this repeatedly, consistently. Perhaps as a young devotee when I was preaching, I used to feel so insecure the moment. I see this now. Somebody who comes to your Bhakti Vriksha, if they're speaking to someone else, then the Bhakti Vriksha leader just feels so insecure about it and all that. Don't do that. Let them talk. It's all right. You just give them the relationship and you be detached and you just present the message purely, transparently. And if you do that and you desire the ultimate benefit of this person, Krishna will take care of everything else. And if he's meant to take shelter of your spiritual master, he will realize that in due course of time. But don't manipulate, please, my dear devotees. Relationship with spiritual master is such an important thing in the lives of devotees that if you manipulate and ask them to take shelter of someone prematurely, they will suffer later. I'm not going to really go into this chart, but you please go through this later. How to take shelter under a bona fide spiritual master, and what is the result of acting based on incorrect understanding. Well, basically, it destroys the faith of multiple individuals, it creates disharmony, conflict, and so on. So please go through these carefully at your own time. So now 435, Krishna is going to tell us what is the real result of having a real spiritual master. It's the fruit of transcendental knowledge, goes from 35 to 38. Yajñātvana punarmoham evam yasyasi pandava yena bhutana sheshani drakshyasi atmani athomai. Having obtained a real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion, for by this knowledge you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme, or in other words, that they are mine. So basically, three things or two things primarily will happen. One is that they will never fall again into illusion, and they will see all living beings as part of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So many of us are initiated, and we can ask ourselves, okay, have I really gotten this transcendental knowledge? Am I really doing this? Once we receive, our transcendental knowledge, this is what is supposed to happen. And that is supposed to happen when you have a real spiritual master. See all beings as part of Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the way it will manifest, the first symptom of seeing all living beings as part of the Supreme is that it will manifest as developing respect for all. And this is actually the level of a Madhyamadikari, that he respects everyone. And based on that respect, he still discriminates, but he yet respects. So a Madhyamadikari, we've learned this in Nectar of Instruction, Nectar of Devotion, even in Ishopanishad it comes up a little bit. So a Madhyamadikari, basically, he adores or loves Krishna. He makes friends with his peers, and to the younger, the innocent people, he's very compassionate, and with the envious, he stays away. But all this he does with respect. And therefore, a Madhyamadikari can preach because people really like to be respected. And so respect means like really seeing everyone as this potential devotee or seeing hope in everyone. So, and it's respect for everyone, not just only, again, for one's own spiritual master or something. It's respect for everyone. So that is how this manifests. And if we can actually come to the platform of seeing everybody in Krishna and Krishna in everyone, that is like the perfection of life. So what was the illusion of Arjuna here? The illusion of Arjuna was to think that his relatives would be killed. So Krishna is saying that, once you understand this, the illusion will be gone. And so Arjuna is kind of saying, okay, why will I not fall into bewilderment? And so Krishna says, well, by this knowledge, you'll be able to see everyone, the man and the demigods, everyone situated separately as the living entities, just with material identification as my parts and parcels. And, you will see that all these living entities are situated in me. They're my products. So, and that only because of illusion, the living entities think that they are the slayers or, the killer and the killed, right? We already heard one verse like that in the second chapter, the slayer and the slain. So it's only because of illusion, he takes all those conceptions. But actually, in their true forms, they do not, they have nothing to do with being the killer or the killed. That's just a misconception. So therefore, you're not going to be in bewilderment anymore. So this whole illusion of Arjuna that he would be the killer of the relatives or that the relatives will be killed, that actually will be removed completely. Yeah. Prabhupada talks about this in the purport. I was thinking what is the connection? But yeah, in this purport, Prabhupada talks. When I saw this, it didn't click me right away. So absolute means 1 + 1 is equal to 1, 1 - 1 is equal to 1. So Prabhupada is talking in the purport about the Mayavadi philosophers. They actually tend to think that Krishna loses his own separate existence when he expands into many, right? And so Mayavadis always give the example of a paper. If a paper is torn into pieces, then, the original paper is gone. It's reduced in some way. So they think that Krishna is just fragmentally distributed like that and he loses his original identity. But they don't understand that Krishna cannot be reduced like that. So Prabhupada is saying that for us to understand that we are simultaneously the parts of Krishna but also parcels of Krishna. Meaning that, so this is part and parcel is a term coined by Prabhupada actually. That part means that yes, we belong to Krishna, but parcel means that we are also separate. And also although we are these separated parts and parcels, the original absolute is not, reduced in any manner. Yeah. So now we'll see the next power of transcendental knowledge, another fruit of transcendental knowledge. Apichedasi papebhya sarvebhya papakrittamaha sarvam jnana plavenaiva rijinam santirishyasi. Even if you're considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you're situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. So again, what was this transcendental knowledge supposed to do? It was supposed to give us this respect for all. Basically, we're supposed to see every living entity as belonging to Krishna, right? So again, it's this respect for all. So if we are conducting ourselves in that way, then that is when, even if you are the most sinful of all sinners, so even if apichet is used here, meaning that it's not supposed to really happen, but even if it happens, then still you will cross over the ocean of miseries. So Narad Muni also says that if we have this kind of vision where we're able to respect the different categories of living entities properly, then the threefold miseries will not actually touch us. In the 4th canto of Bhagavatam, there's a verse where Narad Muni says in the 8th chapter that every man should act like this. And what is that? He says, when you meet a person who's more qualified than yourself, you should become very pleased. When you meet a person who's less qualified than yourself, then you should be compassionate towards him. And when you meet someone equal to yourself, you should make friendship with him. And he says, in this way, you're never affected by the threefold miseries of this material world. But unfortunately, in our life, often what happens is what Prabhupada describes in that purport, that when we meet someone more qualified than ourselves, we become envious of them. And when we find someone less qualified, we tend to deride them. And when we find someone equal, we try to show off and always try to prove ourselves, and we become proud of our activities. And these are actually, Prabhupada says, the causes of all material tribulations. Because at the core of this is actually envy. And envy means no respect for anyone. We don't see the connection of other people to Krishna. So, this is the recommendation. Somewhere I also heard this description that when we respect our seniors, we are actually protected from future sins. And when we respect equals, we are protected from present sins. And when we respect juniors, we are protected from past sins. So respect is actually like a bitter medicine for the mind, because the mind's disease is always to think something to be good or bad based on what is, pleasing to the false ego. So therefore, the tendency is to become rebellious and disrespectful when you see somebody more qualified, and become envious and intolerant when you see an equal, and exploit or neglect in some way when you see a junior. So that is when basically you can cross over this ocean of miseries. That is the transcendental boat that one must become situated in. And so there's multiple analogies here. Transcendental knowledge is being compared to boat here. Later it will be compared to fire and a sword. And the material world, oftentimes it's compared to like an ocean of tears. So it's very salty, and the sharks are the miseries. So we need to be lifted up from this ocean this miserable ocean by the spiritual master. And so the verses are all connected, as you can see. So therefore, we must be eternally grateful for this action of spiritual master. We cannot be lifted by any other method from this terrible ocean. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur asks, okay, if someone is acting so sinfully, how can his heart actually become purified? And without such purification, how can he develop knowledge? And suppose you say he already has knowledge, then what is the possibility of him acting, so sinfully? So then he explains that actually it's not possible for one who has knowledge to commit sins. But therefore, this apichet word is used. So the assumption of the impossible, basically. So it is actually not a possibility, but still, right? Still, if it happens, then you can still cross the ocean of misery. And so in that way, it's glorifying the transcendental knowledge. That is a glory that even if it happens, then you can cross. So again, over here, Arjuna was fearing sin, right? One of the arguments of Arjuna in the first chapter was fear of sinful reactions and its results, right? Sinful actions and its results. So Krishna is telling Arjuna here that the cure for those sinful reactions is actually transcendental knowledge. It is not just running away from the battlefield and not doing anything. That is not how you're going to get transcendental knowledge. Jnana comes through executing the prescribed duties. So do your karma, and by doing your karma with knowledge, you become situated in jnana, because by doing nishkama karma, jnana will arise. So this is not going to entangle you. Don't flee from the battlefield. Do it with proper knowledge. There's a nice boat. I like this picture a lot. You can situate yourself in this wonderful boat. There's another boat of Lord Chaitanya. Then another glorification. Here transcendental knowledge is compared to fire. As a blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions to material activities. So here what is being said, that this blazing fire is basically being compared to transcendental knowledge. So just now we heard that all the sinful reactions are destroyed by transcendental knowledge. Here we are hearing that by transcendental knowledge, all kinds of karmas, basically. So all reactions to material activities, whether even punya karmas, everything is destroyed by the transcendental knowledge. So just as the blazing fire, samidha is here, samidho, blazing, samidho agni. So just as this blazing fire turns fuel wood to ashes, the fire of the knowledge of one's realization of one's own Atma and Paramatma and the connection of all things to this Paramatma or the Supreme Atma, it can turn to ashes all reactions, whether they're from pious activities or sinful activities, anything. All the past karmas are burnt, except, our Acharya's comment, except the prarabdha karmas. So the prarabdha karma is that which, because of which we have a body right now. So it's the prarabdha karma that allows us to have a body. So if the body were to be completely destroyed, or if the prarabdha karma were to be completely destroyed, then the body cannot really exist. So Krishna preserves the whatever little prarabdha karma is required just so that we continue to exist in our body, in this material body, so that we can purify ourselves completely and practice this process nicely, right? And so this knowledge basically, it'll burn up all the accumulated past karmas except the prarabdha karmas, and whatever are the current karmas that we are doing, even those will get transformed. The example is given of how, water rolls off, a lotus leaf. The drops of water, when you put on a lotus leaf, it just rolls off, and just like it doesn't stick. So in that same way, this knowledge will transform the actions that we do even in the present life, just like that. It will not give any kind of reaction. And also, even these prarabdha karmas, they are really, really weakened. It's not really strong anymore. But still, they're situated in the person for the maintenance of the body, for their own purification further, as well as because Krishna wants them to preach the proper path of conduct for everyone else. So that is what is being described in this verse. So all stages of sinful reactions are burned. And Prabhupada uses interesting terminology here, a priori and posteriori. Basically, it just means a priori is a prarabdha and priori means prarabdha karma. And all our acharyas say that, all karmas are burnt except the prarabdha karmas. Now this continues. Krishna is further glorifying transcendental knowledge. Text 38. In this world, nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitram iha vidyate tat swayam yoga samsiddha kale natmani vindati. In this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism, and one who has become accomplished in the practice of devotional service enjoys this knowledge within himself in due course of time. So, such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism. So that is one point that is being made here. So the word used is kalena. So it comes in course of time. We don't want to be very impatient and get, unripe fruits or immature fruits, right? Sometimes, if you plant a fruit tree or something in your home, and the first sign of an apple or a pear, the children just want to grab the apples. Sometimes happens, like even the neighbors, they will steal the green apples. But if you, eat these very immature apples, then the person suffers from diarrhea from the immature fruit. So don't try to get immature fruits very quickly. This verse is telling us that it will come, the fruit will come. Nothing actually purifies as much as this transcendental knowledge. Nothing. There is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. So nothing like no going to holy places or doing austerities or reading many books or none of these things actually can purify us as much as this transcendental knowledge can. So let us be patient about this. And so how is this knowledge then attained? In due course of time. This knowledge is attained through the maturation of Nishkama Karma Yoga. So that is the word here, yoga samsiddha. So you have to allow this to happen over a period of time, and then yoga samsiddha and kalena atmani vindati. So then after some time, not immediately, and it is realized in the atma, atmani, and also this word swayam is used. Swayam means that of its own accord. So it is not going to happen just by accepting sannyas order or some other means of externally renouncing work. It is not going to happen by external means of any kind. It has to be accompanied by this internal mood. And that is when this transcendental knowledge will come, and it will take some time, right? So slow and steady always wins the race. Prabhupada gives the example in Nectar of Instruction. If you want a child, if a woman wants a child, she has to wait 9 months. You cannot get a child in 1 month by making, 9 women pregnant or something like that. Man cannot get a child more quickly. So that's not the way to wait 9 months. The woman has to wait for 9 months. The same woman. So everything has proper time for maturation. Sometimes we're really overly eager for the fruits out of attachment, and we have to wait and give up expectations and allow Krishna to reveal things according to his own sweet will. And actually, once we give up this attachment to fruits, devotional service will become much, much sweeter. Because sometimes we just want to achieve everything right away. And that is what causes so much misery in our life. Because the fruits are not in our hand, right? The fruits Krishna gives. So we can't control it. And as long as we become attached to fruits, and particularly when we are working hard in devotional service and then we are very attached to fruits, it's just a setup for frustration or disappointment in various ways. So this is practical advice that Krishna is giving. So now in text 3940, he is going to speak about who can achieve this transcendental knowledge, or the role of faith in acquiring this knowledge. Shraddhava labhate jnanam tatpara samyatendriya jnanam ladva param shantim achirenadhigacchati. A faithful man who is dedicated to transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses is eligible to achieve such knowledge, and having achieved it, he quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace. So, faith, a faithful man, so faith in what? Faith basically that by following the order of spiritual master alone, one can attain perfection. So that kind of faithful man. And he is very dedicated to transcendental knowledge. That means that he acts, he lives by his faith. So faith always must be demonstrated in action. Otherwise it means that I don't have faith. If we have faith, it should follow through in actions. Real faith means that by this one thing, all things are achieved. We heard the definition of faith in the 2nd chapter again. And the third thing is he subdues his senses, or he controls his senses, basically. So when we have uncontrolled senses, transcendental knowledge just leaks out. It leaks out like from a clay pot with a hole or something. So this is Krishna's recommendation. If we want to achieve, so the word achirena means very soon or quickly. And it does seem contradictory. Here it's saying very soon, and just the previous verse we heard kalena. So, but Krishna is also telling us here, if we want peace quickly, what are the steps? So you become very shraddhavan, that I'm going to be very faithful to my spiritual master, knowing that by this knowledge that will come by following his instructions, from that purification of heart will happen. So therefore I'm going to steadily perform with dedication these activities, and I'll control my senses, right? So how to actually stop this leak is that through the principle of satisfaction. Also, so if you're feeling quite satisfied, the senses will not go all over the place. So remember, we had discussed about this satisfaction before, that Patanjali says that satisfaction is like a rule. It is not just some side point or something. It's actually a rule that we must live by. And the key to satisfaction is just to say enough. So that means we have to engage our senses properly, and then also some slight restraint must be there while we are engaging the senses. Not indiscriminately engaging. So here's a nice quote from Prabhupada. How do we become faithful? Samyata indriya. We have to control the senses. We are here in the material existence because we want to gratify the senses. That is our problem. So this faith of spiritual advancement can be enhanced when we agree. At the same time, samyata indriya. If a physician is treating you, you have faith in him. But if the physician says, don't do this, and you do it, then what kind of faith you've got? When a physician treats a patient, he prescribes something. Don't do this and do this. Some do not. Some do's. Now, if I say, my dear physician, I have all faith in you, but I cannot follow your instruction. You say, do not, but I do it. How can you? How are you faithful? So, Shraddhavan labhate jnanam tatpara samyatendriya. You have to follow the instruction with faith. So we can search our heart and see, do we do this sometimes? We say we have faith, but actually we don't follow through in one way or the other. We give excuses. We give so many reasons why I cannot do this. Because the real thing is that we don't have faith, and that's the only reason. Everything else, because if there is faith, we will find a way of how to do it. Because if there is faith, our question will be not that I cannot do it, or give me a different instruction, but our question will be, I want to do it, but I'm not able to see how to. Can you help me how to apply it in my situation? So that indicates faith. And then in the next verse, Krishna says, he speaks of a person who's unqualified now. So the unqualified person, he does not attain transcendental knowledge. And without this faith, actually no peace of any kind is obtainable. Ajna shraddha dhanascha samyasyatma vinashyati nayam lokosti na paro na sukham samshayatmanaha. But ignorant and faithless persons who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness. They fall down. For the doubting soul, there is happiness neither in this world nor in the next. So there is three categories being described here. There is the Agnya. These are basically the ignorant. So the ignorant people, they're like, they just don't know what is what. So they have no knowledge of scriptures. And when somebody is ignorant, you can remove the ignorance. So that is not so bad. But then the next level is ashraddhadhana. So these are the kind of people who are basically faithless. So they have knowledge of Shastra, but still they don't have faith because they see so many different kinds of mutual disagreements between different proponents of theories. And so they don't have trust basically in any of them. So they have knowledge of scriptures but no faith. And so such a person, he can be directed. It's possible. We often meet such kind of people. They're confused, basically. And so therefore they have a little bit knowledge here, a little bit knowledge there, but they just don't know how to process things. So they can still be directed. But the worst of the whole lot is Samshayatma. Samshayatma is the doubting soul. So they basically tend to think, is this going to really help me? They think, so that they have faith, but then they have this, kind of ongoing doubt. He doubts that if he can attain perfection. He doubts that this process will actually work for me. So, maybe this is just not for me. It works for everyone else. It'll just not work for me. Have you ever found yourself saying something like that? I'm sure, right? I know I have said that sometimes, that yes, this can happen for everyone, but not for me. So, such a person actually can achieve happiness neither in this world nor the next. So Prabhupada in the purport, in the second sentence, he's speaking about the ignorant. Persons who are almost like animals, have no faith in or knowledge of the standard revealed scriptures. And then he speaks about the faithless, if you want to mark. Some, even though they have knowledge of or can cite passages from revealed scriptures, they actually have no faith in these words. And then he speaks of the doubtful people. And those are the words because they don't follow the scripture. And those who are doubtful, they make no progress, they find no good in this world or next, no happiness, and they have no standing in any kind of spiritual emancipation, basically. So we meet people like this. So we should become creative of how to, create faith in people. You just, try different ways. I knew one devotee, not exactly personally I knew, but I knew of this devotee who used to live in the mountains, and he was like a very fired up preacher. But if people didn't have faith, he would say, let's make an experiment, bring 2 glasses. One is the control glass, and 1 glass I'll offer to Krishna. Then he would ask both of them, he would ask them, taste both. And he would say, tell me the difference, right? There's actually a difference in the taste. So anyway, we can think of different creative ways of how to create faith in these doubtful souls also, because devotees are very, very kind, so they try to do that. And Krishna also tells us in the next verse how to destroy these doubts. One who acts in devotional service, renouncing the fruits of his actions, and whose doubts have been destroyed by transcendental knowledge, is situated factually in the self. Thus he is not bound by the reactions of work or conqueror of the riches. So these doubts may be there, but what is Krishna saying here? That even if you have some doubt, just try to act. Just try to act in devotional service. Just try. Don't just say, I don't think it's for me. Because that's what we tend to do when we have a doubt. We just tend to, go back. We just drop our bead bag, or, we just, don't go to the temple, or we stop associating with the devotees, or, something like that. But Krishna is saying, even if you have some doubt, just try. Just try. Don't think it's not for you. Don't think it will not work. Just try. The translation of the first line, that's what it says. One who acts in devotional service, renouncing the fruits of his actions. So sometimes devotees say that they've been practicing devotional service for a long time, but nothing is happening. That means basically they're saying that they're not getting some big reward or some big result like they're expecting. So it could be that someone is practicing in a motivated way. They're doing motivated devotional service, and that we did not actually renounce the fruit of our actions. So maybe that is the reason, someone feels like that. So devotional service is not just simply putting a number of hours or so much hard work and that we'll just get the results like we want. It works on a different platform. So we will not experience the result if we are not really doing devotional service in this mood, the renouncing the fruits of the action. And whose doubts have been destroyed by transcendental knowledge? Basically, the person who reads Shastra. Reading Shastra actually removes all kinds of doubts, and one who applies the transcendental knowledge and who renounces the fruit. So these three things. This is the way how to remove doubts that Krishna is giving. So try to apply this in your life. The next time, doubt really plagues your mind, pick up the book and read. Pick up Bhagavad Gita, pick up Bhagavatam and read. Or just try to apply any principle that you ever heard, or any realization you ever got. Just try to act on that, even for 15 minutes. Just try to act on it. And when you're acting on it, try to renounce the fruits. And then you will see how Krishna will flood you with realizations. Of course, again, if you're going to do it because, Krishna will flood me with realization, that is not like renouncing the fruit. But actually, if you do it without expectation of fruit, Krishna will remove the doubt, and he will give so many wonderful answers he will give answers to our doubts, basically. And when we do this, we will actually feel peace at once. But usually, this is a gradual process. And the very last verse, it's the conclusion. Krishna is speaking to impel Arjuna to act in knowledge. He says, therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharata, stand and fight. And Prabhupada's purport is basically kind of like a little summary of the 4th chapter. If you want to mark in your books, you can do so. So the first paragraph, or the first few lines, starting from the yoga system and ending with makes a perfect sacrifice, he is speaking about the goal of sacrifice, part 1. And then from when we come to spiritual activities up till understand the transcendental activities of the Lord, he's speaking about the 2 levels of spiritual knowledge. And then the next part in the beginning of this chapter until all-knowing personality of Godhead is certainly full number 1. That one, it's learning about Lord's transcendental activities, which Krishna spoke in the beginning of this chapter also. And then he speaks another goal of sacrifice, part 2 over here. Ignorance can be removed by gradual acceptance all the way until authority of Krishna falls back. And then the last part is properly learning transcendental knowledge. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, with the sword of knowledge that has been taught by me, cut the doubt in your heart concerning, this Atma or yourself, or what is proper for yourself, and just perform this Nishkama karma and stand up for that purpose and fight. Uttishta. Uttishta means wake up or stand up We have these prayers every morning, wake-up prayers for the deities. Uttishta Uttishta Gauranga Jahinidra Mahaprabhu Subhadrishti Pradhanena, like that. So Uttishta means to stand up. So Krishna has proved through this chapter basically that jnana is superior to the gross form of work, but the means to attaining that jnana is properly executing the karma or the prescribed duty. Acharyas give the example of how the grain has two parts. There is the husk and there is the rice inside. So the rice is superior to the husk. So similarly, jnana is superior to the gross part. But, to get to the jnana, you have to do your karma properly. So that's the conclusion of this chapter. See if there's any discussion. Oh, Krishna, it's 8:30. 5 minutes, not too long. Any questions, comments?
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. There is you were saying that Sankshay Atma, who actually, there's nothing can be done if you have that, that means that you cannot progress. And while we preach, we come across so many people like that. So should we give up on them, or we should pursue?
You see, doubts are actually a sign of intelligence. In the third canto, Kapila Dev speaks about how intelligence has, 5 or maybe it's 7 different functions. Yeah, I have to list them. Anyway, 5 to 7. But, so having doubts, and within that he mentions doubt as one of the symptoms, samshaya. You get a doubt. That's a sign of intelligence, actually. But what we do with that doubt is very important. So, as a preacher, we are meant to remove the doubt using Shastra. And encourage them and explain to them. So having doubt is not so bad, because when you're preaching to, part of it is basically that people are ignorant also. They don't know what is what. And so in that sense, they have doubt. But here, who is the doubting soul really is that these doubting souls, basically, they have some faith. They have some faith. But they just get too caught up in the doubts. So this is more like, some of us, perhaps, where you have faith, but then sometimes we hit some roadblocks or doubts and we just stop applying ourselves in the process, right? So they have some faith, but so therefore they follow, but they will not follow with full faith or hope or optimism. Those are the kind of people who achieve no happiness in this or another world. Yeah. But if you're just like ignorant and you don't know what is what and you're asking, that is not exactly the samshayatma that is being talked about here. This kind of samshayatma is basically that you just don't have this complete faith or hope or optimism to even find the answers. Or even you have the answers. Actually, that's how it's being described here. That even you know the answers, you think that it will not work for me. That's actually how even both Baladev Vidyabhushan, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describe, and even Prabhupada is describing here. They're always doubtful. What do we say here? Yeah, and even though others may have faith in scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, they do not believe in or worship the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. So such persons cannot have any standing in Krishna consciousness. Is that help you better to distinguish between the two?
Yeah, it did. What I was thinking is that when ego becomes bigger, I mean, people think that I know more. And what you're teaching us is little, that's your own. They don't accept Gita itself, and that is, I think that's the one who cannot progress because their ego is too big.
Okay. Yeah, that's a different category though. They just don't have faith in the Shastra even. So that would come under the category more to me of the ignorant. They just don't know better. They just think that they know better.
Okay.
But the samshayatma here again is that they know, they have some faith, but they're plagued with these feelings that this will not work for me. Or they hit some obstacle and, and the solution seems a little difficult to follow or something sometimes, and they just like doubt, I can't do this. This won't work for me. No? Like that.
Yeah.
Their faith gets swayed by doubt. Yeah. Right?
Thank you. Yeah, it did make
And we see devotees go through this. That they have faith, but sometimes they hit these periods and they're quite miserable. As Krishna says, they don't have happiness in this world or the next. They're miserable, but they won't take the solution either. But if you become open, okay, read Shastra, to take advice from some nice devotee, or just apply yourself, just do, even if you don't feel like doing, just try it. That is what Krishna is saying. If you can do that, we can come out of that doubt. And not that I try once and then the fruit doesn't come immediately, so then I say, I don't want to try anymore. It didn't work for me. I tried so hard 2 times, and again this obstacle came. Okay? Like that. Okay, thank you all very much. Have a nice Krishna conscious week, and we'll continue with the 5th chapter. I may have to do the class next week on Tuesday because I'm traveling on Wednesday. If I'm able to get good internet and everything, maybe I can do it, from the other place in the evening. But maybe I would just actually prefer to do it Tuesday evening. I'll send you an email about it. Okay? Thank you. Hare Krishna.